So thanks, Dr. Vasumati. Next couple of minutes, I'll be sharing some thoughts on what exactly is the patient journey, a patient of diabetic macular edema, and what is the initial workup in diabetic macular edema. So as Dr. Dhanashree rightly mentioned, that DME is one of the most common cause of visual impairment in people with diabetes. So in our SN Dreams, a population-based study, we did show that 10% people in rural area, 15% in urban area, and probably about 20% in metro urban have diabetes. And if you look at diabetic retinopathy, 10% in rural and about 18% in urban people, diabetics have diabetic retinopathy. And 5%, irrespective whether they are rural or urban, will have diabetic macular edema. And if you look at the visual impairment, 40% of the DME will have some form of visual impairment. And this was a visual analog scale, a study which was done with people with diabetes, and they were asked what is the principal fear they have. And if you look at majority, the most common fear person has is blindness. So it is important as far as patient is concerned. And diabetic macular edema affects the working age group. So it's nearly the mean age of a patient is nearly 50 years of age at the time of diagnosis. And we also know that majority of type 2 diabetes are the patients between 40 to 60 years. That means this is the productive age group, the working age group, and DME is a leading cause of vision loss in a working age group. In contrast to cataract, which usually you see after retirement. Another fact which compounds the problem is that it requires a long-term management. It's not like one-shot treatment. The definition, what Wiki says about patient journey is the sequence of events a patient follows from the point of entry into a health system and then continued interaction with it. So the journey begins from the diagnosis of diabetes. This was a very beautiful study which was done, Time to Do More for Diabetes. It was a survey which was done for both physicians and patients. Physicians who were busy physicians, more than 100 patients they were seeing a month. And the patients who were diagnosed to have type 2 diabetes. And at the time of diagnosis, they did this study, and a very good sample across many countries, including India. And they tried asking them to recollect the topics which were addressed at the time of diagnosis. So you can see the physician did tell that they need a lifestyle change, the disease and its cause, the drug treatment, and even the microvascular complications. But when the same thing was asked to patient, that means how patient perceived this information, only about 70% they really felt that the doctor told them about lifestyle change, and retinopathy is much worse. And the situation is not that simple. Of these 50%, only half of them actually went ahead following the advice of the physician. As far as diet is concerned and about exercise, hardly 40%. And if you see the reason they said that it's difficult to do exercise because of my present weight and other things, and I find it difficult to make changes in the life. So what it means is that whatever is conveyed also is not actually taken into account when a patient sees. And microvascular complications, those the physician, nearly 90% of them spoke about it, told about the importance. But what patient recollected, only half of them, they felt that something about eye and other parts involvement was told. And even in these patients, about 60% of them, they felt that they know that it affects the eye, but it seemed to be a very remote problem. It's not that important. However, if you look at what they are worried about, as far as all other complications, as I had mentioned before, is the loss of sight or the retinopathy. So that's the journey which they start with. And journey is often beyond vision. It's not only the eye. And this was one of our study. We did what is called as a cost utility evaluation. Basically, it is how many years of life they are ready to give for a perfect vision. And for diabetic retinopathy, they are ready to forego nearly 30 to 40 years of their life. That means that is so much important for the patient. We have heard this, that diabetes itself is nowadays considered as a cardiac event because it is associated with high risk of cardiovascular events, hypertension, cardiovascular accidents, cerebrovascular accidents, and that's the reason it is a leading cause of death worldwide. The patient with DME again has many, there are evidences that it's not only diabetes alone, but if a person has diabetic macular edema, all the complication risk is much higher as compared to those without diabetic macular edema. So this was a study where they tried looking at what is the risk of acute myocardial infarction or a cerebrovascular accident. And you can see nearly more than 2.5 times more risk of a patient who has diabetic macular edema as compared to patient who has diabetes with no diabetic retinopathy. So they are prone. So the journey is not only the eye, they have many other events during this journey, which is important. This is another important thing, that it's when they have on MRI, the white matter lesions, the risk is much more, especially for a cerebrovascular event or a stroke. So a patient with retinopathy and on MRI having cerebral white matter lesions, the risk is nearly 4 times more of developing stroke. So that again suggests that it is not the eye alone, but throughout the body, the features happen. Now, I will take you across to a journey of a patient with diabetic macular edema. So what I spoke till now was the time before diabetic retinopathy. No, he has a life before he developed the feature, and that's a time where he has neglect of health, wrong beliefs, denial of the disease, poor compliance, and then usually the diagnosis is by chance because screening is not a very routine process in our country, and he thinks that's a bad luck. And there is a factor of denial, though we tell them that it's your diabetes, but he immediately says my diabetes is very well controlled. Then comes the shock and fear of first injection, and that's a fear which all our DME patients have, and that actually is much more than the fear of a decline of vision if he doesn't treat it. That's something we need to address. And then he comes into the assembly line of injections. So that is a time this is another phase. He feels that there are a lot of waiting, lot of appointment, not much care of sense. That's the feeling which a patient gets. And then he gets dazed and confused because there is uncertainty which is there. He's very uncertain about the treatment schedule. If he goes, whether the injection will be given or not, what is a break in the injection thing, what is progression of disease. Sometimes doctor says there is swelling, sometimes he says now it is flat. So that's a confused stage. And even that stage, there is a caregiver burnout. Many times we know some patients, the moment we see, we just get a little bugged up that, oh, I've been injecting that, especially the non-responders. So this is the phase, a journey which a patient of DME undergoes. And then there are two ways it can go. Either he takes control, there is good systemic control, good compliance, follow-up, his vision improves, quality of life improves, or he progresses, the stage of retinopathy progresses, and at some stage, the vision is not improving. He takes help of a low vision aid and the course is down course. So this is the journey of a patient of diabetic macular edema. Coming to the second part of my talk on workup of a patient of a diabetic macular edema, I'll be talking about initial workup, a very short, already Vasumati has covered beautifully the role of imaging, and OCT, I'll just touch shortly on that too. So history taking is a very important step in whenever you are dealing with diabetic macular edema, and there are a lot of clues which you get. The duration of diabetes, we know, is one of the most important risk factors for both diabetic macular edema and diabetic retinopathy as such. Medications which he is on, insulin, oral hypoglycemic drugs, antihypertensive, lipid-lowering drugs. Is there any change in medication? Many a times when a patients are transferred from a oral hypoglycemic to insulin, there is a sudden control or sudden lowering of blood sugar, which aggravates the diabetic retinopathy. Sometimes they may develop diabetic macular edema. Systemic history is important because they all have bearing on diabetic macular edema too, the renal profile, cardiovascular events, systemic hypertension, lipids, and pregnancy also. There are certain drugs which cause macular edema, and especially in a case of diabetic macular edema, if he is on these drugs, you can see more of edema, and sometimes they may be the sole cause of macular edema. You may be injecting them, which may have no effect till you stop these drugs. Thiazolidinediones, the glutathiones, are a drug. Besides that, there are many others like fingolimod, which is a anti-cancer drug, tamoxifen. Important is niacin, prostaglandin analogs. All these cause macular edema, so you should take a history on these. Get a detail of any recent ocular surgery which has been done. You need to differentiate between a pseudophakic macular edema and a diabetic macular edema. Any details of previous laser and what was the indication of these lasers. A detailed history of previous injections. Many times when we get patient already having many intravitreal injections which have been given, it's very important to take a detailed history. Which was the drug used? Was there any subjective improvement after the initial injections? Number of injections he had taken, and important, I even note down the dates so that I calculate what was his compliance for the treatment. This was a 54-year-old gentleman, diabetic for 7 years, reasonable good control diabetes. Right eye had no diabetic retinopathy, left eye had moderate non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy with macular edema. He had received a couple of intravitreal anti-VEGF injections. And after that also you can see one cyst in the parafoveal inner ring. He had the history of use of glutazones, and we just stopped that. We never injected at this visit, and you can see the macular edema totally went off. There are evidence now that it's not only thiazolidinedione, but if they are also on insulin, definitely the risk, the hazard ratio of developing macular edema is much higher. Coming to imaging in diabetic macular edema, when you do imaging, you tend to do imaging prior to initiation of the therapy to delineate the stage of diabetic macular edema and diabetic retinopathy. And then you repeat as needed in the event of a non-responsiveness or during the monitoring of this patient on a long term. OCT is the mainstay of monitoring and diagnosis. However, we have seen there is a role more and more of OCTA now coming up, and wide field angiogram. There's also a role of ultra wide field photography. I'll be just showing a couple of examples of it. So this is a wide field angiogram, which already I think Vasumati also showed. We can pick up these subtle NVs, which are sometimes missed on clinical evaluation. A person who is non-response to anti-VEGF, sometimes we can make out the leaking microaneurysms and see if they are amenable to laser also, or that also gives you idea of what would be the next line of therapy. Clarus, no commercial interest, but this is a wide field, very high resolution image where you can even make out these subtle NVs. Sometimes you may need not do a fundus fluorescein angiogram just to diagnose these NVEs. Sometimes you also get a wide field photography done to know the adequacy of panretinal photocoagulation, whether there are any skip areas you would like to treat if the new vessels are not regressing. OCT, you want to classify whether it's a vasogenic, where you have these cystic spaces and the microaneurysms which are leaking, or you don't have many of these features, non-vasogenic type of edema, and more important, which you can never pick up on anything, the tractional element, except for OCT. You want to know which type of edema you are dealing with. Role of OCT is there. Just before we start with role, how you diagnose diabetic macular edema. Is it OCT or a clinical examination or a retinal photograph? Yes, definitely by a good skeletal biomicroscopy and a photograph, we can know about diabetic macular edema. But OCT is an important feature. And this was a beautiful study where they did both the evaluation. And what is alarming, that patients who had diabetic macular edema on OCT, on fundus photography, nearly a third of them were not found to have DME. They were not diagnosed as DME, even if the DME caused visual impairment. So it's important, all these patients. So the rule is that if you have anything more than moderate NPDR, and clinically, even if you are not suspecting, good idea to get a baseline OCT done in these patients so that you don't miss. When to do? So baseline to assess DME on monthly visits and in a patient who has poor response or a non-response to anti-VEGF. What parameters you want to look? You want to look at central retinal thickness, the central subfield thickness to be more accurate to monitor your treatment. And qualitatively, you try to look for markers of vision gain and markers of response. There are a lot of markers, but two of them already it has been shown: the disorganization of the inner retinal layers. This is when you are unable to segment the inner layers, is one of the markers for visual gain. Another marker is the ELM disruption or loss of ISOS layers, which gives us, these two are a very consistent markers. If you find this, unlikely, even after resolution of macular edema, the vision may not improve. The same thing, parallelism, already has been spoken about. The markers of response for anti-VEGF, good response, so you have a higher thickness, you get a better response. You have hard exudates, they tend to resolve better. Neurosensory detachment is a good marker, so it resolves very quickly. The poor markers with anti-VEGF is presence of epiretinal membrane, hyperreflective dots, which are thought to be more related to inflammation. And on a OCTA, if you find an enlarged deep capillary plexus, definitely that's something which again is a poor indicator response to anti-VEGF. For steroids also, neurosensory detachment is a good marker. Hyperreflective dots and hard exudates are again presence of these. We think that it works better. This is all based on the evidences. ELM integrity and ellipsoid zone integrity, they are responsible. If they are compromised, the response of the steroids is usually low. So to conclude, the key elements in a successful management of diabetic macular edema is you must understand the patient journey. And as I told, the patient journey is not the journey for the eye alone. There are many other factors which he has during his journey of diabetes, and a comprehensive initial workup which can give a good successful management of diabetic macular edema. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to take any questions.